In 1932, Donald Bradman scored 299 not out in a cricket game against South Africa. He couldn't score 300 because he ran out of batting partners.
The BBC broadcast their first TV programme.
A loaf of bread cost 4 pence.
In 1932, Granny was born! Yay!
This is a podcast all about Granny Jan, who also goes by Mum, Granny, Jan, and Jeanette Knowsley. This episode is about getting married and bringing up 5 children.
I was introduced to Albert by my friend Pam Parker. We worked together and she was going with a fellow from North Cronulla or down there anyway, and I went down to the beach with her and she introduced me to Albert. I think it's lovely that I still am in contact with Pam.
Does she claim responsibility for your life?
I think to myself she's got a lot to answer for.
Albert was just there. He was just there. But I think he introduced himself to Jan because we were all young girls sitting on the beach eyeing off the lifesavers and the surf, and he came up and sat with Jan. And we went to a couple of dances and he danced with Jan that night.
And do you remember what dating Papa was like? What did you like about him?
Oh, now that's a leading question, isn't it? I don't know what I liked about him. We must have clicked, though. We went to balls. They were the thing to do then, the surf club ball.
We had better backtrack to find out how Albert got involved in the Cronulla Surf Club.
Albert got involved in the surf club when he was at high school because it was a selective high school and these now friends came across to Canterbury Boys and Albert must have thought it was a pretty good deal they were on down at the beach. That's how he got involved with the surf.
Okay, back to surf club balls.
It's dressing up with long dresses and so I think corsages were in, whether they went on the wrist or in your frock. It was mainly lounge suits for the fellows. They didn't get tucks or anything like that.
Yeah.
Albert was all right with the old-time dancing. It's repetitive dancing. You know, you do the same steps and then start again.
Yeah.
And they used to have a barn dance, which could be made progressive. You did a sequence and then changed partners. I think the ladies went forward and they did the same thing again. And by the time the dance had finished, you'd said hello to everybody that was up. That was good. The old-time dancing, it'd be nice to come back. Some things are good to have repeated. It was a lot different being engaged in those days than it is these days.
In what ways?
Yeah. Oh, no sex, please. It was just a still getting to know you type period, I suppose.
So where did you get married?
At Ashfield, Church of England on Bland Street.
You had bridesmaids.
Yes, I had Pam and my cousin Joan.
And who did Albert have as his groomsmen?
Harold Spurway and Nick Dixon.
Were they friends from Surf Club?
Yes,
okay.
yes, he's a very good friend.
Joan was married by then. She was the matron of honour and I was a bridesmaid. It was a lovely wedding and Jan looked just beautiful.
Do you remember meeting Albert's family?
It must have been a special occasion, come and meet Mum and Dad. Yes, but I knew I'd been to meet them before the wedding. His mum, Beatrice Ann, had cancer, so she wasn't very well. I'm sure she was at the wedding, but then I think she passed on maybe in 12 months' time. Percy asked us would we like to move in with him, and we did.
Where were you living before that?
We weren't very adventurous. We were with my mum and dad. I don't know why we didn't go and rent a flat like everybody does now. Probably because Albert was living at home, his home.
Yep.
I was living at my home. I think that's probably why we stayed with that arrangement. I worked for a couple of years after we got married, so that was good. I wasn't in the house with Percy all the time,
Yep.
but he was good company. He used to take himself to the movies, and he was a bowler, so he had his regular routines. It worked out well. We bought our first car, which was the Cream Holden. Went to the Olympic Games in Melbourne. But of course they had the Australian Championships nearby down in Victoria, didn't they, to coincide with the Olympics. So it was a dual purpose. I think we went to the Olympics because we were down there with the surf championships.
So when you went to the Olympics, that was before you had kids?
That was 56 and John was born 57. It just got more and more hectic as each child arrived. And there were 57, 60, 63, 66, 73. We just stayed at home. There was no daycare. I think it was only Brian we got involved with playgroup.
So the others just stayed with you until they went to school?
That's right.
So how did you feel your day with them?
There were neighbours' kids. There was the Savills down the street and Eamon Darcy up the street. And I was going to say you had them all or none of them. You know, they just went all together.
Did you have to feed them all if they all arrived at your house?
Oh, I can remember making pikelets because one kid said, "You must like pikelets, Mrs. Mosley. You're always making them." So they must have gone down well with everybody.
How did you do all that washing for 5 kids?
Kate, it was never ending. When I moved in, there was only a gas copper and a sink. So I don't remember when I put a washing machine in. It would have been before the kids. And it was a spin dry. It had to be bolted down. I really do appreciate not having to do all the washing, that's for sure.
How did you fit everyone in the car?
That was before all the strict ruling came in for car travel. I had a car seat that hooked over the front seat. So the car must have had front bench seats and it just hooked over.
For a baby or for a little kid?
For a little kid. Oh, and the bassinet just sat on the back seat loose.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure there were no seat belts then either.
Where did you learn to do bowling?
There's a lane down the street that takes you to the houses on the hill. I had a friend who lived there who did 10-pin bowling. And yes, I'd like to try that. And we'd catch the bus. Or was I driving then? I'm not sure, but it was at Balmain. And learnt how to 10-pin bowl. It's a lovely game. But they did away with, I call it manual recording, and they had a machine that automatically did the recording of your games. It wasn't as good anymore. I made friends with her because her eldest son, I think, was as old as John, and he got hurt one time and I was his standby mum, and Beryl couldn't go, and I went up to Canterbury Hospital, I think he was, and that's how I met Beryl.
And what school did the kids go to?
They went to their father's school, Earlwood Public, and the boys went to Canterbury Boys. Anne was lucky. She got to go to Kingsgrove North co-ed, and the boys were very envious of her.
So I'll tell you the story about when I was studying for my undergraduate degree. So it was in the mid-80s, and at that time there were no personal computers at home, so you needed to type up your assignments on a typewriter, and we had this little manual typewriter at home. And some might be surprised, but I used to complete my assignments on the night before they were due. Mum was amazingly generous. What she did was while I was writing, she'd start typing. And we'd get to her bedtime and she'd hand over the typewriter back to me and I'd keep writing and typing and writing and typing and writing and typing. And when she got up in the morning, she'd finish the typing for me while I had a shower and had breakfast and got ready to head off to uni. I think this really exemplifies her generosity, which happened in lots of circumstances and for all of us.
What about after school activities? Did kids do sport or any other, or music or anything like that?
No music, unfortunately. Peter played soccer, and I think Brian did it for a while too. And Anne did physical culture. They did scouts down at Earlwood.
All of the kids?
Think so. And Anne did guides.
Yep. Did you go out many places as a family?
We visited Granny. She lived in Earlwood. Granny and Bob lived in Earlwood and then moved to Cronulla. We went to Cousin Jones.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to the beach? Because Papa was at the beach a lot, wasn't he?
He went to all the carnivals because he was the referee.
I remember from the early days being a beach bum, which was probably the best times I had going to the beach, scrambling around for shade under an umbrella, going for dips in the ocean at South Cronulla, or the times we used to go to Shelley Beach Pool and swim there with your mother as well, my grandma, and have a ball playing with all the other kids and learning to swim with my back of my cozies being held to keep my head from going underwater. It's been amazing the amount of support you've given us over the years, and all the time maintaining a calm, never letting temper get the better of you.
I'm going to tell you guys about Granny's pool. When I was young, on the weekends, quite often we'd end up going out to Cronulla to visit Granny, Marjorie Nurkin, Mum's mum. Shelley Beach is just down the road from her place, so we'd always go down to the beach, and I pretty much got taught how to swim and snorkel in Granny's pool there. I'd quite often stay in, like Ben does, until my lips turned blue, and Mum would always bundle me up in towels and give me a hug in the sun. It's probably the safest place I think I've ever been.
What about meal times? What did you cook for everyone?
Steak and 3 veg and baked dinners. I don't know that I even did spaghetti there, which was a shame.
What about having all those kids around the dinner table?
I don't know how Mum put up with 5 of us in the household. It was really quite an amazing task.
My first memory of Granny with 5 kids at home and me being the new person was her amazing patience and her grace. She could feed as many people that were there with all this amazing food, and I was made so welcome amongst all the chaos with little Brian. And Granny always said that having children far apart always kept her young, and I truly believe that it did.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky growing up. I was almost like an only child, but with a really experienced mum. She's had all the other kids before me, and she had to referee between Peter and Andrew a lot, so she'd seen it all and done it all.
I've had to come to Sydney to work from time to time, and being able to go to like a home base while doing that, it makes it almost like you're not living away from home. You're travelling and working and going to a very, very familiar home and loving surrounding, it was pretty good, you know.
We all wish you a wonderful 90th birthday, Granny Jan. Take it away, Andy and Karen.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mum. Happy birthday to you. Love you, Mum.
Thanks so much for listening. In the next episode, you'll hear from Granny Jan about what it's like to be a grandmother.